what is my assessment on what has been transpiring in the microcosm, the armpit, the asshole known as Twitter, when people say that PlayStation should not be nominated for certain games in the Game of the Year categories, that there's going to be the precious Sony bias for God of War Ragnarok, all that shit. Well, let's be brutally honest, and I know this might hurt your feelings, but maybe Sony should stop making high tier, high echelon games that are actually really good and not broken messes, and actually they have impactful stories. Like, let's start there. Maybe Xbox should get on the ball with that, since, you know, I'm an Xbox gamer. I've been using Game Pass, best deal in gaming, but it has not reached the same level of AAA quality that PlayStation has. That's why most hypocrites who have a Sony PlayStation, they hate the practices, ideologies, etc., but they constantly will go out and buy PlayStations, and each time they boycott something, they're playing that PS5, PS6, PS7 right in their fucking home. And it's kind of funny in a sense, you know what I mean? But that just shows that there is staying power for those types of games. So I don't really believe people when they say Sony has changed too much and I'm going to depart, I don't like this, I don't like that, etc. You can have those virtues, but you're not really going anywhere if you follow where the games are, and that's where the gamers go. We go where the games are being played and demonstrated in the killer apps that are presented on that console. Most people will bring up Sony Japan being dissolved by Sony as a sort of crux. I think this is probably where this started, and then it boiled over into the hatred of cinematic games, saying that, oh, they're just pretty and they have no gameplay. Well, that's a loaded sort of argument there, but I will answer A and B. So for the closure of Sony Japan, you might not like it, you might hate that the creative aspect of that company is gone, but mostly they got shuttered because their games just were not on the level of sales as a God of War or a Spider-Man. I'm talking games selling like 20 million, 18 million copies like no tomorrow. I saw the sales for Gravity Rush 2, and compared to that, the sales there against God of War, it was abysmal. It was terrible. So they can have all the ingenuity in the world, but when it comes to sustaining yourself as a company, you have to be doing well. You have to be like someone like a Capcom or whatever, where they can put out these Japanese titles that are high quality, original A tier, and still sell well. And the thing is, sales there. Guerrilla Cambridge, they were killed off immediately because they were not selling well. When there is something that is not doing well to your bottom line as a company, you generally cut the fat. And that's the reason why Sony Japan got cut. You know, people will say it's a differing ulterior motive, but I think it's mostly correlated to sales, and you can see that with the game I just listed. When we have games like Yakuza, where again you do a lot of remedial tasks, their complaint is that these cinematic games are overly cinematic and you're doing remedial tasks like pressing buttons and opening doors, but you're rocking babies in Yakuza and mashing through text that are not fully acted. I think we might have some hypocritical values there. It is acceptable in one region, but not the other, huh? So you're rocking a baby to sleep in Yakuza is fine and all that, mash through text and all that, but these same practices of a downtime, a slow period in a story-based game could not be comprehended because it's simply from the West and it's simply from PlayStation, and that's it. So that's where more of the ire comes out. And then you have the whole Last of Us bit, where of course people were simply brain dead. They had a missile stuck in their head like one of the Crash Bandicoot characters, and not understanding that when they pitted Ghost of Tsushima against The Last of Us Part 2, it was two Western studios going against each other and two PlayStation produced titles going against each other. So that meant that no matter who won, PlayStation won, right? Again, like I said in the beginning, maybe Sony needs to stop producing great games. Maybe you'll stop complaining then. And then we move on to even deeper situations with God of War itself. God of War Ragnarok I played for 14 hours, and I can tell you it's definitely an improvement on God of War 2018. Not perfect, but it hits just right as a product. Like every singular bit that they listen to for the boss fights not being tailor-made to variety, they definitely cleared that up with God of War Ragnarok, and I am just appreciating and enjoying the game. And even that game is getting a lot of slander, like folks want to lump everything into the cinematic games hybrid, and they really don't talk or discuss about the gameplay at all. What gameplay is there, they really don't discuss it or mention it. And I've been in various encounters. Someone said the game is like 95% puzzles, which is a huge exaggeration after playing it. I've been in more encounters than anything. If anything, it's been like a mix of puzzles and action all combined together in this open space. And God of War as a franchise has always had puzzles, death traps, even in the older God of War titles where there's a room like full of spikes and you have to platform and jump your way out, otherwise you're fucking dead. So it's something that comes with the brand name. It's something to expect. While the hints are definitely overbearing, they've been core of the franchise as far as things like traps and puzzles and environmental solutions go, at least in that regard. Not the hints, just those in particular. I think there is definitely an anti-PlayStation sect, an anti-PlayStation movement. Maybe it's also tied to this whole console war bullshit that people tend to entice themselves and go on day in and day out and pretend they aren't PC elitists, or pretend they aren't Xbox, or pretend they aren't extreme Nintendo fans. I mean, they all just exist in the same vocal minority microcosm each and every single time they open their mouths and they say that, hey, Forza should have been nominated for Game of the Year, despite not having the know-how to realize that, of course, there hasn't been a racing game in history that has been Game of the Year winner. You know what I mean? It hasn't happened. It doesn't happen. It doesn't exist, yet you want it. And I don't see why. Like, personally speaking, you don't need Geoff Keighley's show to validate what your opinion is on Game of the Year in the first place. What is your Game of the Year matters. And a show telling you that is something, you know, not to fearmonger over. Whatever their Game of the Year is, that jury, that panelist, that's their Game of the Year. It's not my Game of the Year. Sometimes it lines up, sometimes it doesn't. Last of Us Part 2 was my personal Game of the Year, and it won Game of the Year for 2020. Resident Evil Village was my Game of the Year for 2021, and it didn't win. It lost to It Takes Two. Spider-Man, Insomniac in general, Ratchet, what else? Capcom with RE2 Remake, DMC5, all of these possible Game of the Year contenders got snubbed. You know what I mean? Jedi Fallen Order, I really enjoyed that game. It didn't win jack squat at any award show to my recollection for Geoff Keighley's event whatsoever when it migrated into the next year. It's very weird that folks are trying to tell Geoff Keighley when his cutoff nomination date is for God of War, when God of War came out November 9th, and people were trying to tell him that it was cut off beforehand, but the cutoff date was November 18th, I believe. So yeah, God of War was eligible to be nominated for Game of the Year, and people are just fear mongering once again. I don't understand why folks are so afraid of a game potentially winning at an award show where your own jury and votes should matter the most over this fucking award show. You understand? I don't get it. I don't understand. Like, what else do you need? More representation for certain games? Okay, that's fair enough. More categories for certain games that should be aligned well? That's fair enough. That's fair enough to say for the show, but to be scared of God of War is just ridiculous. Like, let the competition flow, let the best man win, and if the best man wins, that might invite more people to check it out and have more discussion in that regard. And I don't see what is the problem with that. I don't see that you having this as an issue. Like, the Game Awards is not the end all be all to game critique and game discussion. It never was, it never will be, it never is, but somehow it always ignites because of Sony and the Game Awards, and it's absolutely baffling because I don't think that people really bring up the fact that when they say PlayStation is paying off Geoff and all this shit, that's what happened to Horizon when they got snubbed by Zelda Breath of the Wild. Like, what happened there? Like, Sony, what, did they lose out on a paycheck or something, huh? Did they not have the money sufficient enough to pay the Game Award jury at the time? Like, what happened there? Like, nobody brings that up. Like, Horizon always gets snubbed, and it's gonna get snubbed probably this year too with Forbidden West. Where's the money and where's the paycheck to ascend that to Game of the Year status? Guess what? It's not gonna happen, right? You know, people are always talking about that bias, but they can't really bring up the facts against the Horizon situation, the Spider-Man situation, etc. Always claiming all this bullshit that these studios, these PlayStation studios, are getting special treatment when it comes to these situational events. Like, why isn't Returnal on the Game of the Year panel? You know what I mean? Why isn't that happening? It's because it does not fucking happen. You're gonna have to account for all of these other Sony exclusives. You know, Days Gone, why wasn't Days Gone fucking Game of the Year nominated? You know what I mean? I don't think it was, but still, I don't think it won anything. I don't think it got anything in that regard. So that's just how it is. Some of your favorite, like basically the Game of the Year award show just turned into, I'm not satisfied unless my game wins, and that's it. And that's a fucking petty way to go about it, to go about anything of that regard. You know what I mean? If God of War wins, cool. If it doesn't win, cool. Is it my Game of the Year? I can't tell you that. I have to beat the game. And once I do beat it, I will have the final assessment. But so far, I am really enjoying it, and it is close. It's probably the best thing I played this year thus far. And I just don't understand. It's once again, I don't think I used this analogy, but when people leave out the gameplay presented in cinematic games where they simply talk about walkie talkie, but they don't talk about the actual gameplay, they just leave that part out. It's like slicing out a little portion of pizza and throwing the rest in the trash. You know what I mean? It's more to these games than just fancy graphics, at least the ones that I played. And I think that if a game had like less than subpar graphics, you're gonna have another crowd of people coming out of the woodwork and saying, oh, this game looks trash and whatnot. You know, it's a double-edged sword. Nobody is really appeased in that regard. I think it's all about the performance at the end of the day and seeing less bugs as possible on my rig. Now, while this is all based on user experience, because I had games where they didn't work out, like GTA Definitive, like that game did not fuck up on me whatsoever. If you had a poor experience with that game, well, I'm sorry, but I did not, and that's what it boiled down to. I just think people need to relax, like take a chill pill, okay? Like, fuck, touch some grass, I don't know. But when I hear these vast generalizations of people saying that gaming is ruined because of Sony and big budgeted AAA cinematic releases, yet at the same time they are willing to snatch them up if they have their own biases, and they are willing to simply say, oh, this is ruined, and not call out like another company for it or whatever if they're liking it. I just think that everyone has their own picks and selections, and gaming is a selfish hobby, and I'm going to support those big budgeted Sony releases because so far I'm enjoying them and I have no reason to doubt them at the moment in terms of my trust. That's how it works. That's kind of how I feel. Like I'm an independent free thinker. I think with my own wallet, my own accord, my own ideals. I don't need anyone to validate that. I don't need GL Show to validate that at all. It is quite funny seeing the overreactions and generalizations happen, but I don't think that PlayStation is ruining gaming. If anything, I think gaming is only going to get just more quality to their means of storytelling, but the gameplay is always going to be paramount at the end of the day. In some games, they do have the interactive walk simulator of interactive dramas like David Cage, you know, that whole bit, but there's differing avenues of what to expect for some of these brand franchises. When I play stuff like Uncharted, I expect a giant globe-trotting adventure with guns and shooting and melee and all that stuff, unless they soft reboot everything. And even when they soft rebooted God of War, the basic premise remained the same. You are a god killing gods and other monsters, and that's it. Nothing has changed outside of the fact that Kratos has a son now. So yeah, gaming is not being ruined by PlayStation. If anything, there's always going to be entire avenues to support, whether it's like third party or indies or other, you know, game developers trying out differing things. It's always going to be that. It's the same thing when people say, oh, the MCU is ruining cinema. And I love the MCU, but there's still cinematic movies coming out that I'm gonna watch. There's still those things in particular to enjoy. I'm gonna love the shit out of Creed 3. Are you kidding me? That's gonna be awesome in fucking theaters. I'm gonna love the shit out of that movie. Ain't nobody gonna stop me or tell me otherwise. That's how I feel about it. And there's always going to be those differing types of cinema. So I'm not here sitting listening at fucking Tarantino on his bullshit saying this is the worst year in cinema history, blah blah blah, because there's still great movies coming out, great horror movies coming out. I'm gonna see fucking Scream 6 and I'm gonna enjoy that shit. People just like to stay hung up on this is the end all be all just because I simply am not having fun with it. And you have to realize that Sony doesn't have a gun to your head. They aren't coming into your house and fucking shitting on your bearskin rug. It's easy to let go when you realize this, and people just are either gluttons for punishment or just ignorant, and they want to make stuff up and get those likes and retweets and clout tweets up. That's how I feel about it. Like I said, the cinema sort of analogy is the perfect thing, because cinema is not dying because there's a lot of superhero movies. Like, there's still enjoyable movies to watch. You just gotta find it. You gotta search for them. You gotta discuss them. They're still there. There's still people reviewing independent films and putting out hit pieces and fucking, you know, opinions on independent films. So it hasn't really gone anywhere. A24 is a fucking success. So this whole generalization of MCU ruining stuff and Sony ruining stuff is not even remotely true, because people are too lazy to go and search out all this original content. And that is the bottom line for that. It's always the case each and every single time I see it, and they don't support it enough. Anyway, this is Renegade Operative signing out. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my analysis on the anti-PlayStation sect and what I feel about their virtues in particular. I think it is a hive of people from the basket of the anti sort of Western movement, culture war, a lot of Japanese purists. We also got console war enthusiasts from other platforms, all in the same basket, as well as some ill will from previous Game of the Year awards from Geoff Keighley's show. All those people just culminating into the same area, and therefore you get these weird opinions like, these games are just pretty graphics and have no gameplay of the sort. You know, I've seen the same sect of people, I've seen them actually go to YouTube, press the play button, review the game that way, and then they just took another person's review, they live vicariously through someone else, and they said, done, I reviewed the game, this game is this score, etc., which is absolutely asinine behavior. I never seen anything like that ever before. I always made sure that even in the games previous or prior that I have played the series enough to make an assessment on the overall formula. I never just simply said, well, I pressed the play button on YouTube, done, that's it. Like, what kind of shit is that? Like, this is the age we live in, and this is the people that we live with, and honestly, they're just not nuanced, and it's okay to admit that, but it is what it is, and that's why I call it out for what it is. Anyway, God of War, if you're enjoying it and not using the YouTube play button, definitely give it a playthrough. You know, I had to make that joke again. Yeah, just there's some good discussion and barriers and thoughts that lie in between, and whether it wins game of the year or not, we'll see what happens. But I know my personal game of the year will be what it is when I select it. God of War is up there. I have to get through the back half of the game, and once I get through it and see the events there, I will tell you how I feel. But until then, I'm Renegade Operative. I'm signing out. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this sort of thorough breakdown rant on this whole debacle, and we're probably gonna get more people tweeting out dumb shit to derail it, but if it wins, it wins. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that is my overall opinion on that. I will see you guys next time. Like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy it yourself. Tell me what you think in the comment section below, and I will see you guys next time. Later.